Hello everyone, and welcome to the channel where we bring you the most inspiring stories from history. Stories that not only touch your heart, but also help you learn English in a natural and beautiful way. Today, I am going to tell you about a boy who was so shy that he could not speak in front of his own class. A boy who was afraid of the dark, afraid of ghosts, and afraid of people. A boy who failed as a lawyer because he could not say a single word in the courtroom. A boy whose own father died while he was too nervous to be at his bedside. But that boy did not let fear define his life. That boy found a courage so deep, so strong, that it brought down an entire empire. That boy became the father of the largest democracy in the world. His name is Mahatma Gandhi. How did a shy, frightened child become the leader who would unite 400 million people? How did a man who owned almost nothing, who wore a simple cotton cloth, shake the foundations of the mighty British Empire? How did he teach the world that the greatest weapon is not a gun, but the truth? This is a story about fear and courage, about weakness and strength, about the power of a single person to change the course of history. And as always, this story is a powerful way to improve your English. Through clear storytelling, meaningful vocabulary, and timeless life lessons, you will learn naturally while you listen. Now let us begin from the very start. Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi was born on October 2nd, 1869, in a small coastal town called Porbandar in the western part of India. His family belonged to a community of traders and farmers, simple people who lived close to the land. His father, Karamchand Gandhi, served as the chief minister of the small princely state. Though his father held an important position, the family was not wealthy. They lived a modest, simple life. His mother, Putlabai, was a deeply religious woman. She spent hours every day in prayer. She often fasted, going without food, to purify her soul. Little Mohandas, or Mohan as his family called him, was the youngest of 4 children. He was not a special child. He was not strong, not brilliant, not brave. In school, he was an average student. He was so shy that he would run home the moment school ended to avoid talking to anyone. At night, he was terrified of the dark. He believed that ghosts were hiding in every corner. His nurse, a family servant named Ramba, told him to repeat the name of the god Rama whenever he was afraid. Rama will protect you, she said. Mohan clung to those words like a lifeline. He was a child full of fears, full of doubts, and full of a desire to be good. One day, his older brother borrowed money from Mohan without permission. To pay him back, Mohan stole a small piece of gold from his own brother's armlet. The guilt burned inside him. He could not sleep, could not eat. Finally, he wrote a letter of confession to his father and placed it in his hands, trembling with shame. His father read the letter. He did not shout. He did not punish. Instead, tears rolled down his cheeks. He tore the paper and held his son close. Mohan later said, "Those tears of love washed away my sin. I learned from that moment the power of forgiveness." When Mohan was only 13 years old, his family arranged his marriage to a girl named Kasturba. She was also 13. Mohan was still a child, playing with toys, but suddenly he was a husband. The marriage was awkward and full of childish jealousy. Mohan tried to control Kasturba, telling her where she could go and who she could see. But Kasturba had a strong will of her own. They fought often. Yet, over time, she would become his greatest teacher in patience and love. At 16, Mohan faced a loss that shattered him. His father fell seriously ill. Mohan wanted to be a good son and nurse him. But his young desire for his wife often pulled him away. One night, while Mohan was in the bedroom with Kasturba, a servant knocked on the door with terrible news. His father had just died. Mohan rushed to the room, but it was too late. His father was gone. Guilt consumed him. He had not been there for his father's last breath. He carried this wound silently for the rest of his life. It taught him the harsh lesson that selfish desires can cause lasting pain. After finishing high school, Mohan faced a difficult question. What should he do with his life? He wanted to become a doctor, but his family suggested he become a lawyer. It was a path to respect and a good income. To become a lawyer, he had to go to England. This was a huge decision. In those days, crossing the ocean was considered a sin by some in his community. The elders declared him an outcast. But Mohan made a promise to his mother. He would not touch meat, alcohol, or women. With her blessing, he set sail for London in 1888. London was a shock. Cold weather, strange food, and a completely different culture. Mohan was only 18 years old. He felt like a tiny fish in a huge, unfamiliar ocean. He tried desperately to become an English gentleman. He bought expensive suits, took dancing lessons, even tried to learn the violin. He spent hours in front of the mirror adjusting his tie. But he was deeply unhappy. It was not who he was. Slowly, he found his way back to simplicity. He began to cook his own vegetarian meals. He made friends with people who were interested in different religions and philosophies. He read the Bhagavad Gita, the sacred book of India, and for the first time, it spoke to his heart. He also read the teachings of Jesus Christ, especially the words, "If someone slaps you on one cheek, turn to them the other also." This idea of responding to hate with love planted a seed deep inside him. After 3 years, Mohan passed his law exams and became a barrister. He returned to India, full of hope. He would now start his career and support his family. But the reality was cruel. Mohandas Gandhi, the trained lawyer, was still the same shy boy inside. His first case in Bombay was a disaster. He stood up in the courtroom to cross-examine a witness. His mouth went dry. His heart pounded. Words failed him completely. He could not speak. Humiliated, he sat down and handed the case to another lawyer. He was a total failure. His brother tried to help him get work in Rajkot, but Mohan's extreme shyness followed him. He was even thrown out of an office by a British officer whom he had once briefly offended. He sat on the steps outside, crushed. His career was over before it had begun. And then, in 1893, an opportunity arrived. A firm in South Africa offered him a 1-year contract to help with a legal case. Mohan grabbed it. He thought it would be a simple job in a new land. But that journey would change the entire world. The British colony of South Africa was a place of brutal racial discrimination. Indians, who had come as laborers and traders, were treated as inferior beings. They were called coolies and were forced to live in segregated areas. Mohan, wearing a suit and tie, had no idea what was waiting for him. A few days after arriving, he boarded a train for a business trip. He had a first-class ticket. He sat in his seat, reading a book, when a white passenger entered the compartment. The man looked at Mohan with disgust. He left and returned with a railway officer. "Get out," the officer said. "Coolies are not allowed in first class." Mohan showed his valid ticket, but they did not care. When he refused to move, a policeman threw him off the train onto the cold platform. He spent the entire night sitting in the dark station of Pietermaritzburg. The winter wind cut through his thin coat. He shivered, not just from cold, but from the deep, burning shame of humiliation. He thought about returning to India immediately. He thought about giving up. But then another thought came. Why should I run away? The injustice I have suffered is not unique. It is the fate of millions. I must fight. Not for revenge, but for justice. That cold night was the turning point. The shy boy who could not speak in court began to die. And a new Mohandas Gandhi began to be born. He stayed in South Africa and organized the Indian community. He taught them about their rights. He wrote letters, petitions, and articles. But the government responded with more cruel laws. Indians had to carry passes at all times. They could be beaten, arrested, or thrown out of their homes without reason. Gandhi realized that simple petitions were not enough. He needed a new weapon. And that weapon came from the depths of his soul. He called it satyagraha. This is a Sanskrit word that means holding firmly to truth. The idea was simple but revolutionary. You fight against evil, not by hurting the evil person, but by refusing to cooperate with the evil system. You accept suffering yourself, but you never inflict suffering on others. You win not by making your enemy bleed, but by making your enemy think. You appeal to their conscience. The South African government passed a law requiring all Indians to be fingerprinted and registered. Gandhi told his people, "We will not obey this unjust law. And we will accept the consequences without violence." Thousands of Indians burned their registration papers in a huge bonfire. They marched in the streets peacefully. The government responded with whips, bullets, and prison cells. Gandhi himself was jailed several times. But each time, the movement grew stronger. The world began to notice. After more than 20 years of struggle, the South African government finally agreed to negotiations. Many of the most unjust laws were changed. Gandhi had done the impossible. A man with no army, no weapons, and no political power had defeated a government. He had discovered a force stronger than violence. He had discovered soul force. In 1915, Gandhi returned to India. He was now 45 years old. The people of India welcomed him as a hero. But he did not come back to enjoy fame. He came back to serve. India at that time was a jewel in the crown of the British Empire. For nearly 200 years, the British had ruled the vast land. They took its wealth, its cotton, its spices. They taxed the poor farmers until they starved. Indians had no right to vote, no say in their own destiny. They were strangers in their own land. Gandhi did not jump straight into big politics. He took time to understand his country. He traveled across India in third-class train compartments, seeing the real life of the people. He saw peasants who were starving while their landlords took everything. He saw factory workers who worked 16 hours a day for pennies. He saw the untouchables, the lowest caste, who were treated worse than animals. And then, in 1917, a poor farmer named Rajkumar Shukla traveled for days to find Gandhi. He came from a place called Champaran, where British landlords forced farmers to grow indigo, a plant that turned the soil barren. The farmers were trapped in a cycle of poverty and abuse. Shukla fell at Gandhi's feet and begged him to come. Gandhi went to Champaran. The British authorities ordered him to leave immediately. Gandhi refused. He was arrested and put on trial. Thousands of poor farmers gathered outside the courthouse, silent, peaceful, just watching. The British magistrate was terrified. He had never seen such a force. Eventually, the government dropped the case and agreed to an inquiry. The indigo system was abolished. It was Gandhi's first victory in India, and it was for the poorest of the poor. One of the most powerful protests that Gandhi led was the Salt March in 1930. The British had a law that Indians could not make or sell their own salt. They had to buy it from the government and pay a heavy tax. Salt was a basic necessity, especially in the hot climate of India. Even the poorest person needed salt to survive. But the British taxed it anyway. Gandhi announced that he would break the salt law. He would walk to the sea and make salt himself. The British laughed. It seemed like a silly, small act. But Gandhi understood something they did not. When a simple act touches every single person, it becomes a revolution. On March 12, 1930, Gandhi set out from his ashram with 78 followers. He was 61 years old. They walked for 24 days, over 380 kilometers. Villagers lined the path, throwing flowers and weeping. Every day, more people joined the march. Journalists from around the world followed. The thin man in a simple cloth held the world's attention. When they reached the sea, Gandhi bent down and picked up a piece of salty mud. He held it up to the sky and said, "With this, I am shaking the foundations of the British Empire." It was a symbolic act, but it shattered the chains of fear. All across India, millions of people began to make their own salt. The British arrested over 60,000 people, including Gandhi. The jails were overflowing. But you cannot imprison an idea. The Salt March made Gandhi a global icon. The moral power of his nonviolent resistance was undeniable. The world began to see the British Empire not as a civilizing force, but as a bully with a gun. Gandhi's life was one of constant sacrifice. He gave up all his possessions. He wore a simple cloth that the poorest Indian could afford. He lived in a simple room, slept on a mat, and ate the simplest food. He identified completely with the suffering masses. He became known as Mahatma, which means great soul. He also fought tirelessly for the rights of the lowest castes, whom he called Harijans, meaning children of God. He cleaned toilets, a job reserved for the so-called untouchables, to break the barriers of caste. He brought women into the freedom movement, telling them that their voice was equal to any man's. He taught the nation that political freedom was meaningless without social justice. But the path was never smooth. The British tried everything to stop him. They put him in prison for years. His beloved wife Kasturba was also imprisoned. In 1944, while they were both under house arrest, Kasturba fell gravely ill. Gandhi nursed her with his own hands. But her body was weak. She died in his arms. He had lost his companion of over 60 years. The man who had given strength to millions sat alone and wept. In 1947, India finally won its independence. The long night of colonial rule was over. But the joy was poisoned by a terrible tragedy. The country was partitioned into two nations, India and Pakistan, along religious lines. Mobs of Hindus, Muslims, and Sikhs turned on each other. Trains arrived at stations filled with dead bodies. Rivers ran red with blood. Over 1 million people died in the violence that followed partition. Gandhi was heartbroken. He said, "I have only one request to make, that you shoot me dead before you tear this country apart." He refused to celebrate the first Independence Day. Instead, he went to the worst-hit areas. He walked barefoot alone through villages burned to the ground. He fasted, refusing food until the killing stopped. In Calcutta, his fast was so powerful that the leaders of the warring communities came to him, laid down their weapons, and wept. They promised peace. The killing stopped. Gandhi's weakened body, thin as a skeleton, had done what armies could not. But there were those who hated his message of peace and unity. They saw his love for Muslims as a betrayal. On the evening of January 30th, 1948, Gandhi was walking to his evening prayer meeting in Delhi. He was 78 years old. He leaned on the shoulders of his grandnieces, his walking sticks of flesh and love. A crowd waited for his blessing. A young man pushed through the crowd. He bowed before Gandhi. Then he pulled out a pistol and fired 3 shots into his chest. Gandhi fell, his hands folded in the traditional greeting of Namaste. He whispered his last words, "Hey Ram, O God." And then he was gone. The man who had taught the world to hate the sin but love the sinner was murdered. The world fell into a deep silence. Leaders from every nation sent messages of grief. But perhaps the greatest tribute came from a simple Indian woman who wailed, "The father of our nation is dead." Now, what can we learn from the incredible journey of Mahatma Gandhi? First, your weaknesses can become your strengths. Gandhi was shy, fearful, and a failure as a young lawyer. But his quiet nature taught him to listen. His fear taught him compassion. His failures taught him humility. Do not hate the parts of yourself that seem weak. They're often the seeds of your future strength. Second, the power of nonviolence is real and lasting. Gandhi showed the world that you can fight injustice without raising your hand in anger. He believed that violence only brings more violence, but truth and love can break the chain of hate. In your own life, try to solve conflicts with patience and understanding. The strongest person is not the one who shouts, but the one who remains calm and kind. Third, live simply and think deeply. Gandhi owned almost nothing, yet he moved the world. He proved that your value is not measured by your possessions. When you remove the clutter from your life, you can hear the voice of your own soul. You can focus on what truly matters. Fourth, be the change you wish to see. Gandhi said, "You must be the change you want to see in the world." It is easy to complain about the world. It is hard to change yourself. But every great movement begins with one person deciding to live differently. If you want kindness, be kind. If you want honesty, be honest. If you want courage, act with courage. And finally, never give up on the truth. Gandhi's life was full of defeats, imprisonments, and heartbreaks. But he never gave up on his commitment to truth and love. The path was long and painful, but he walked it to the very end. Your dream may take years. It may take decades. But if you keep walking, one day you will reach your destination. Gandhi once said, in a gentle way, "You can shake the world." He was a poor man, a simple man, a man full of fears. But he shook the world with nothing but his soul. You, right now, are learning English. You may feel shy, just like young Mohan. You may feel like you cannot speak, cannot find the words. But remember the boy who could not speak in court. He became the voice of millions. Your voice, too, can grow. One word at a time. One sentence at a time. One day at a time. Do not be afraid of your weaknesses. They're your teachers. Do not run from your fears. Walk through them, as Gandhi walked through the fire of hatred, and you will emerge stronger on the other side. Thank you for listening to this story. If it touched your heart or gave you new inspiration, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Share this with someone who needs to hear the message of peace and courage. And tell me in the comments, what part of Gandhi's life moved you the most? I read every comment. Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and remember to be the change you wish to see in the world. Bye for now.